Alright then, we've looked at world population of the past and the present, so the only place left to go now is the future. Obviously, we can't know exactly what the future holds, but we have models and equations that can give us good expectations of what's to come. That being said, there is still a lot of debate about when global population will start to plateau. Some sources project the population will peak as early as 2050, but other models suggest it won't until 2064 or even 2100. The quantity of human population is also a debate. The low end of the projections suggest a peak of 9.7 billion by 2064, before declining to about 8.8 billion by 2100. The higher end of the projections suggest a peak of over 11 billion, with some models even reaching a peak of 15 billion people. Think of our current world population, but nearly doubled. That's a lot of people. So let's revisit the population statistics of today's world. Global population stands at 8 billion. The top 5 countries are China, India, the United States, Indonesia, and Pakistan in that order. By 2050, here's what the top 5 countries by population will look like. We have India at the top now with 1.7 billion, followed by China with 1.4 billion. But now, instead of the United States, we have Nigeria as third place with 400 million. The US has been demoted to fourth place with 388 million, followed up by Pakistan with 370 million. When we look at a comparison of the top 10 countries for 2020 versus 2050, we get even more interesting results, with many African, Asian, and South American countries taking top spots for the most populated countries. The share of the world's population outside of the developed world was around 68% in the 1960s, but by 2050, it is projected to be over 86%. There are several differences between these projections that cause the results to vary so widely, but it really boils down to better quality of life, lower fertility rates, and population aging brought on by increased life expectancy. Reduced fertility rates always drag behind reduced mortality rates, and different countries experience varying levels of this lag time. More on this in later videos. But fertility rates are highly influenced by women's equal rights, access to contraception and family planning care, educational opportunities, and participation in the labor force. This is partially why more developed countries have slower population growth. As progress in medicine, vaccines, nutrition, lifestyle, and general quality of life are improved, mortality rates go way down, meaning that people on average live much longer. Longer life expectancies actually reduce the size of a population. When fertility and mortality rates are both quite low, you get an aging population. An aging population has a higher percentage of folks over 65, and not enough middle-aged or younger people to replace the older generations in the workforce or that can support them for things like Social Security. A large aging population places a lot of burden on a country. Several developed countries, like Germany and Japan, are experiencing issues with an aging population. Now you might think that, they should just increase their fertility rate or increase immigration to counter the effects of the aging population. But it's a really complex topic because countries can all at once be having an overpopulation problem and an aging population problem. We're going to dive deeper into these complex topics throughout this series, and we'll specifically look at age structures of countries too. Okay, so going back to our future world population projections, the models that suggest population will peak at 9.7 billion assume a declining fertility rate, primarily among developing countries where fertility rates are quite high. They also assume aging populations. The models that predict a global population peak of 11 or even 15 billion assume high rates of fertility and not as much of an aging population. We see a much longer lag time between mortality rates and fertility rates dropping in current developing countries than occurred for developed countries during their initial transition. We'll talk more about this and why this occurs in later episodes.